for me. I get asked that question a lot. Most of you may not know, in the fall, I put on black and white stripes and I run up and down a football field with a whistle and a flag. And so quite often I have people asking me if I'm blind. So this is very personal. It's a different blindness, but still a personal question for me. So I found this definition online, but the difference between physical blindness and spiritual blindness. Physical blindness, it says, is darkness surrounding us, causing us to not see. Spiritual blindness is darkness inside of us, causing us to not see. I thought that was I love how with God, there's a lot of times the physical and the spiritual are complete 180s of each other. And then what is spiritual blindness? Spiritual blindness, what is it? What are we blind to? And I believe we're blind to Jesus, blind to what Jesus wants to do or is doing, and we're blind to, I think, people that Jesus wants us to minister to. And so, jumping into that, we're gonna jump right into to John 9, and we're gonna read most of the chapter today. So, Nyla told me that she would give me the sign when I was going too long, but oh, there she is. All right, so they didn't want to burn the hot dogs. So we're gonna John 9:1. So it says, as Jesus was walking along, he saw a man who had been blind from birth. Rabbi, his disciple asked him, why was this man born blind? Why was it because of his own sins or his parents' sins? Jesus says it was not because of his sins or his parents' sins. This happened so the power of God could be seen in him. We must quickly carry out the tasks assigned us by the one who sent us. The night is coming, and no one can work. But while I am here in the world, I am the light of the world. Then he spit on the ground, made mud with the saliva, and spread the mud over the blind man's eyes. He told him, go wash yourself in the pool of Siloam. Am I saying that right? Siloam, which means sent. So the man went and washed and came back seeing. Okay, so first of all, as I said, I like to ask questions when I read the Bible. And when we went through this chapter in our group on Sunday morning, the question that really hit me here is, Jesus made mud out of spit. That's a lot of spit. Anyway, I'm just like, seriously? Okay, anyway, it was just me. Like, how much spit did he have that he could make all that mud that's not religious or spiritual at all? It's just a question that I had. So that's how the story begins. Here's a man, they see this man, Jesus heals him, and then we're going to jump real quick to verse 39, and this is the end of the story, and then we're going to go back and we're going to work our way through the chapter. So in verse 39, this is when Jesus is now speaking to the man that has been healed. It says, Jesus told him, I entered the world to render judgment, to give sight to the blind, and show those who think they see that they are blind. So there's two different blindness here. We have so Jesus is telling him it's physical blindness and it's spiritual blindness. So let's jump into this and let's see. Obviously, the Pharisees are in there, but I think there's other people in here that were spiritually blind. And so, again, I'm just going to throw some questions out and we'll see how it goes. So the very first, we're going to go back up to the top. The disciples, when the first question they asked is, Rabbi, why was this man born blind? Was it because of his own sins or his parents' sins? Here we have Jesus that sees a man that needs compassion, that needs healing, that needs to be ministered to. And the disciples are trying to figure out whose fault it is. Was it something that he did? Was it something that his parents did? They're pointing fingers. They're trying to place blame. Have we ever looked at someone in a situation and thought to themselves, well, they're just getting what they deserve? You know, if you're going to go surfing while you're in Hawaii, you kind of just get what you deserve, you know? We do. Sometimes we prejudge people, and I think we miss opportunities to minister to people. Let me say, I do. I prejudge people. I look at them, I'm like, well, yeah, you kind of put yourself in that situation. And I think we waste so much time trying to figure out whose fault it was. Who do you deserve this? For 9 years, I worked for the United States Marine Corps. All right, usually somebody barks when I say that. So, no Marines? Oh, he's upstairs. Okay. And it was a great experience. I loved working for the Marine Corps. I met some really cool people. And I'm in IT, and so as everybody knows, in IT things go wrong. That's like most of our job is figuring out errors, what went wrong, who made a mistake, fixing code, fixing data, and that's what we do. So with the Marine Corps, it was interesting because anytime there was an error, something went wrong, we had three things we had to do. First of all, you had to identify the problem. Second of all, you had to identify whose fault it was. Third, you would identify a solution to the problem. So we wasted so much time figuring out whose fault it was. Most times it took us so long to get to fixing the problem. And I think I do that sometimes. When I see people, I miss it. I think I'm spiritually blinded to helping people that Jesus wants me to help, but I'm too busy prejudging them. I don't know, maybe it's just me. Maybe I need to be more like Jesus and less like the disciples. That's a question I ask myself. So we're going to move on now to his neighbors. John 9:8 says, this is still the blind man they're talking about. His neighbors and others who knew him as a blind beggar asked each other, "Isn't this the man who used to sit and beg?" Some said he was, and others said, "No, he just looks like him." But the beggar kept saying, "Yeah, I'm the one." So they asked, "Who healed you? What happened?" And he told them, "The man called Jesus made mud, spread it over my eyes, and told me, 'Go to the pool of Siloam, wash yourself.' So I went and washed, and now I can see." "Well, where is he now?" they asked. "I don't know," he replied. So here we have friends and his neighbors who knew he was blind. They've obviously known him for a long time. We find out later he is an adult. This guy he's old. He's been blind his whole life. So they know this guy, and he's just been healed, and they don't believe him. They think it's fake news or whatever. You know, is it a fraud? Is it really even you? They're suspicious. They're skeptical. Got any skeptics in the house? I'm a skeptic. I question everything, but we have to, right? I question everything nowadays because of fake news. But what happened here? It didn't fit in what their paradigm of what they thought God was. That this didn't fit in the box that they had. Their religion was in a box, and this healing didn't fit. And so they rejected it. They completely missed Jesus because it didn't fit in what they thought they knew Jesus was. Because when it comes down to it, they didn't know Jesus. I mean, these are people that I'm sure they'd been raised in the temple, and they knew God, and they knew the law and the Torah, but they missed Jesus. In the previous chapter in John is when Jesus, he confronts the woman who was caught in adultery, and they were getting ready to stone her, and he says, you know, that he was without sin, cast the first stone, and then so they all leave. Well, then later, the Pharisees are now questioning who he is and where he gets his authority. And in John 8:19, they ask him, "Where is your Father?" And Jesus answers, he says, "Since you don't know who I am, you don't know who my Father is. If you knew me, you would also know my Father." See, if his friends and neighbors knew Jesus, then they would know the Father, but they didn't. A little plug for the Friday morning men's Bible study. Happens back here, 6:30 on Friday morning. It's an awesome time. If you're a guy and you can make it, I highly recommend it. We just kind of get real. It's not preachy. It's not churchy. It's just dudes talking about stuff. We read the Bible, and then we dig into it. And a couple weeks ago, Zach Howard, who leads it, he made a great point. He said they was having a conversation with a guy at work, and they had a mutual coworker somewhere. Some guy lives somewhere else, and I think his name was Bob. And the guy's like, "Oh, you know Bob?" And Zach's like, "Yeah, I know Bob. I've known Bob for a long time." But then Zach said, "To be honest, I haven't talked to Bob in 5 years. I mean, I know Bob, but do I really know him? I mean, I know who he is, but if there's no relationship, if I don't talk to him on a daily basis, do I really know who he is?" And I think that's the question that I wonder with myself. I mean, I know Jesus, but sometimes do I miss Jesus because I don't know him well enough? Do I know him well enough to know that when something happens, this is God or this is not God? Do I have to be skeptical? Or should I should just know? I should be able to see. And I think sometimes we're blinded because we just don't know Jesus. Because we don't know Jesus, we don't know God, which you can say, well, I don't know the will of God. If we know God will know his will. And so I think that's a challenge to me, is that there's times that if I'm missing it, am I missing it because I just don't know enough of Jesus and who he is? The more we know Jesus, the better my spiritual vision is going to be. So, all right, moving along, we get to the Pharisees in this story. Verse 13 says, "Then they took the man who had been blind to the Pharisees, because it was on the Sabbath that Jesus had made mud and healed him. The Pharisees asked the man all about it. So he told them, 'He put the mud over my eyes, and then he washed it away, and I can see.'" I think it's interesting, his story's getting shorter and shorter. He's getting tired of telling the story, so now he's just like, "Look, mud, washed it, I can see." So the Pharisee says, "Well, this man, Jesus, is not from God, for he is working on the Sabbath." Others said, "But how could he be an ordinary sinner and do such miraculous signs?" It says there was deep division of opinion among them. I had never seen that before. They didn't agree. So then the Pharisees again questioned the man who had been blind and demanded, "What's your opinion about this man who healed you?" And the man replied, "I think he must be a prophet." And the Jewish leaders refused to believe the man had been blind and could now see. So they called his parents. I am 57 years old. And that phrase, "I'm going to call your parents," still sends chills down my spine. Takes me back to when I was in 8th grade, sitting in Mr. Hayes' office. "Young man, I'm going to call your parents." I'm like, no, anything other than that. I don't care. Beat me, whip me, I don't care. Do not call my parents. Anyway, I just thought that was funny. They're going to call your parents. So we have the Pharisees, that they know there's something about this Jesus guy. And he's going to mess up their deal. See, they know the law. They keep the law. They study the law. They're the ones that control people with the law. It gave them power. It gave them position, their prestige. It gave them reputation. I mean, they were somebody special. And Jesus was going to mess that up. And they knew Jesus was going to mess that up. And so it says that they refused to believe. They knowingly chose to not believe that this man had been healed. We're going to buzz to the very bottom of the chapter here, the last 3 verses, and this is where, again, where Jesus is talking. We'll get back there, but Jesus was talking to the Pharisee, or talking to the blind man in 39, and it again says, when Jesus told him, "I entered this world to render judgment, to give sight to the blind, and to show those who think that they see that they are blind." Some Pharisees who were standing nearby heard him and asked, "Are you saying we're blind? Are you talking to me?" And Jesus said, "If you were blind, you wouldn't be guilty. But you remain guilty because you claim you can see." See, Jesus called them out. Jesus is going to hold them accountable. You claim to see. You claim to be the rulers of the law. You claim to know God. And yet, you're still choosing to not believe. You're choosing to be blind. I'm going to hold you guilty. Because see, again, they knew. I don't know if they knew that he was the Messiah, but they knew there was something special about him. And they knew he was going to mess their deal up. In 2 Corinthians 4:4, it says, "Satan, who is the god of this world, has blinded the minds of those who don't believe. They are unable to see the glorious light of the good news. They don't understand this message about the glory of Christ, who is the exact likeness of God." This is the Pharisees. Pharisees knew who God was. They had studied God, the Torah, their whole lives. They knew God. But since they had chosen not to believe, Satan had blinded them to Jesus, and they missed Jesus. The only thing anyone in this entire chapter needed was Jesus. And so many of them missed it because they were blinded. And it was the Pharisees literally chose to not believe. I'm not going to say we do that, but are we comfortable? Am I ever in a position where I don't want to sacrifice my prestige or power? Not that I have any prestige or power, but I think it's a good question to ask. I mean, I'm not saying I don't choose to believe, but maybe there are times when I think a little more like the Pharisees, and I'm very comfortable in where I am, in my job, in my life, in my house, and Jesus Jesus is showing up over here and he wants to do something. You're like, no, I'm comfortable over here. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. Maybe I'm just preaching to me. But I think sometimes there's some spiritual blindness there because we're comfortable, because we like where we are, we like the position that we're in, and we don't want to lose that. So I don't want to be like a Pharisee. So all right. So here's the one that we're going to move on to chapter 19, and I think this one kind of blows my mind. So he says, we're going to get your mom and dad. So mom and dad come. And so they asked the parents, said, is this your son? Was he born blind? If so, how can he now see? His parents replied, well, we know this is our son and that he was born blind, but we don't know how he can see or who healed him. Ask him. He is old enough to speak for himself. His parents said this because they were afraid of the Jewish leaders who had announced that anyone saying Jesus was the Messiah would be expelled from the synagogue. And that's why they said, he is old enough, ask him. It's just, mom and dad have seen this kid his whole life. He was born blind, lived his entire childhood blind. He's now an adult and he's blind. He just got healed. His entire life has changed. He's gone from the blind kid to the blind beggar. And now your son has been healed and he can see you for the first time. But yet they're so scared of being rejected by the Pharisees. They're so scared of what this is going to do to their reputation, to be kicked out of the temple, be kicked out of the synagogue. That's the word I lost it. They're kicked out of the synagogue, that they miss Jesus. That blows me away. What would people think if we got kicked out of the synagogue? Well, they think your son got healed by Jesus. Again, it's similar to the attitude of the Pharisees. Do we ever miss Jesus because of what we're scared of what people think? We're scared that people think we're a Jesus freak, for all you people in the 80s. There's a few of us out there, we know, Jesus freaks. That's right. I think we do. I do. I think sometimes maybe I do. I think sometimes I miss Jesus. I'm blinded because I want people to like me. I don't want to be discarded. I don't want to be kicked out of the synagogue, so to speak, the social synagogues that we have created. So, all right, moving along. So we're gonna bounce over a few verses. We get down to they call the man that was healed back. They argue with him some more, and he keeps telling the same story, and they don't like it, so they kick him out of the synagogue. And actually, yep, can you come play here? That's the sign for. I always forget that, so I wrote piano real big on my thing. I told you I'm not a preacher. I'm not a preacher. I'm just here to talk. It's all good, yeah. So down to verse 35, John 9:35, it says, when Jesus heard what had happened, he found the man and asked, do you believe in the Son of Man? The man answered, who is he, sir? I want to believe in him. Because, see, the first time they met, the guy was blind. But Jesus said to him, you have seen him, and he is speaking to you now. Yes, Lord, I believe, the man said, and he worshiped Jesus. Of all the people in this entire chapter, the only one that saw Jesus was the blind guy. And I love what Jesus says here, and I'm not like a theologian, I'm not going to pick apart the Greek, but if you look at verse 37, the first of it is in past tense. It says, you have seen him, past tense. Then he says, and he is speaking to you now. So Jesus says, you've already seen him, speaking about himself. But he didn't see him with his eyes because he was blind. So when Jesus says here, you have seen him, he's talking about his spiritual eyes. This is a guy that had faith. Even though he'd spent his whole life blind, he's the only guy that, with his spiritual eyes, saw Jesus. And that is what saved him. He's the one that saw Jesus, and he worshiped him. Another thing that blows me away about this, I don't have this in my, if you go back to the very first thing, when the disciples asked about whose fault it was, and Jesus said, this happened Or this wasn't because of his fault or his parents' fault, but this happened so the power of God could be seen in him. So this kid was born blind, lived his whole childhood blind, into an adulthood, he's a beggar blind, solely so that on this day, Jesus could heal him. And he was standing there when he heard that conversation between between Jesus and the disciples. Would you be bitter at that? I think it'd be really hard to sit there and hear that the whole reason you've been blind was so that you could be healed today. I don't know, maybe it's just me, but this guy, it didn't. He saw Jesus. And that's I'm horrible at wrapping up, so this will be my wrap up here. I didn't take that class in seminary. There's an online class maybe I can take. I can Google it. So when I speak, I always try to do two things. I try to challenge people, and I want to encourage people. And so I think the challenge for us is, first of all, is where are we spiritually blind? Are there attitudes or beliefs in our life that are causing us to miss Jesus? To miss what Jesus is doing or what Jesus wants to do? And are there attitudes in our lives that are causing us to miss people that Jesus wants us to minister to? I think I have some blind spots, to be honest with you, and I uncovered a few of those as I went through this chapter for myself, and I'm gonna try to rectify those. I'm gonna try to take those blinders off, and I'm asking Jesus to put mud on my eyes, to heal my spiritual eyes, so that I can see people the way Jesus sees people. And that's my challenge to you. And if you're saying, no, I don't think I do, well, I would ask God. Ask God to reveal it to you. Ask Holy Spirit to speak to you, and to reveal those blind spots in your life and in your attitudes and opinions. And then figure it out. Maybe it's, do we need to know Jesus better? I guess my question is, does everybody know Jesus? If you don't even know who Jesus is, let's start there. Come talk to me when we're done. I'll introduce you to Jesus. This will be the best day of your life. But maybe do we spend time with Jesus? Is Jesus that guy that I knew 4 years ago, but maybe I don't really have a relationship with him now? We don't really keep in touch, so to speak. We're Facebook friends, but we don't really talk. Are we comfortable in our positions? Are we just, I got a good life. I don't want to jump out there and get crazy and do something. Jesus might be telling me to do something, but I don't know, I'll let the church do that. I'll let Jonathan do that. I'm just going to live my life, and I got a bumper sticker on my car. That's good enough. I don't need to get crazy. I just want to challenge you. Get to jump out there. Take the blinders off and see what Jesus has. There's a world out there that needs us. And that's my challenge to you. So my encouragement to you, I saw something in the very first verse of this chapter. I read through it several times, and there was one little thing that I saw that kind of, that really challenged me, but I want to use to encourage you. So go back to the very first verse. It says, as Jesus was walking along, he saw a man who was blind from birth. He actually saw the man. The disciples, didn't say the disciples saw him. I think there's people in this world that we don't see because of our blinders. There's so many people we miss. I miss. I think there's a lot of people out there that just need seen. There's people out there that need our compassion, that need our prayer, that need just whatever. They need assistance. They need help. And I don't think we see them a lot. I think we're so focused on ourselves and our lives and what we're doing. We blind ourselves with our, the horse blinders. I can't do that with this arm. But so that's my encouragement to you, is to look for people. There's people out there that just need to be seen. And Jesus sees them, and I encourage you to see them the way Jesus sees them. Love on them, pray for them, and encourage them. Just show them some compassion. Maybe they just need a hug. But if we don't even see them, there's no way we can be Jesus to them. And so that is my encouragement to you, is just see Jesus, or see people, show them Jesus, and just have compassion on them, folks. And so I pray that we would all have